LSU wins over Southeastern back on Saturday night. 56-10 was the final. Y'all understand the way I feel about these games. They are great for fans that want to go tailgate. They are great if you want to bring your kiddo to his or her first game. They are great if you don't want to deal with traffic. They are great if you're an LSU coaching staff that wants to rest guys with injuries. They're not great to analyze in this chair 2 days later. There's just not a lot of meat on that bone. So, to me, the story from Saturday night was really singular for LSU. The story on Saturday night was just from the eye test alone. Garrett Nussmeier looked pretty healthy. And I don't care about the statistics. I don't care about how many touchdowns LSU scored while he was on the field. I don't care about how many receivers you threw the ball to or any of those things. It's just not really relevant for a guy who threw for 4,000 yards last year, is a fifth-year senior. Like, that stuff is immaterial against Southeastern. What is not is the fact that he did take a deep shot to Chris Hilton into the end zone. Now, there was pass interference. I didn't connect on it, but he showed that he could get it out there. In the touchdown pass, he threw to Xavion Thomas, where he dropped back. There was pass rush. He spun out, rolled to the left, flipped his hips, threw across his body on the run on a line to the back of the end zone. It was about a 30-yard throw. That was awesome. And as I wrote in my column for LouisianaSports.net, like, that throw, just the mechanics of it and the velocity on the football is the same against the Southeastern Lions as it is against the Detroit Lions. Like, it is what it is. You're either healthy enough and have a strong enough arm to do it, or you're not. And Garrett Nussmeier did that on Saturday. To me, he looked like he was ready to go. He looked like a guy who was not limited. And that's really all I was interested in seeing on Saturday night. So to me, you've got a quarterback that looks healthy. And I want to be clear about this. I believe that LSU's identity as a football team this year is already essentially established. There will certainly be games where they play better. There will be games where they don't play as well. That's just the nature of a football season. But this is going to be a team that has a strong defense. How strong it is to be determined. But it has a strong defense that it will lean on to win games. It has a veteran quarterback who's got a lot of arm talent and a lot of production in his recent past. And it's got a running game that is not up to standard. That is the identity of this team. That is not to suggest that they can't come out in November and run the ball well on somebody on a given Saturday. Block it up pretty nicely, break a couple of tackles, hit a couple of big plays, and all of a sudden you've got a really nice day at the office. But I think to suggest that this team is going to go from not really being able to push Louisiana Tech around in week 2 to a dominant running team in week 10, that's probably not going to happen. So because of that, how far LSU goes, in my opinion, is going to come on the back of that defense and that quarterback. That's the team. That's the backbone. That's the identity. And I thought on Saturday, just regardless of competition, I've made it abundantly clear what I think about LSU's competition on Saturday night. Regardless of competition, you have a quarterback that is healthy enough to play. So all last week, you heard me say, don't play, don't play, don't play, and I wouldn't have played him. But I think I can now start to connect some dots here that at least make sense to me. Doesn't mean I'm going to have any news here, but these dots make sense to me. He didn't throw at the middle of August, end of August, when we were out there. That's because he was hurt. LSU didn't throw the ball down the field very much at all, and he was inaccurate for the first 3 weeks of the season because he was hurt. LSU did not say anything about the injury because they didn't want the other teams to know he was hurt when he was hurt. LSU mentioned something about the injury when the injury was in the rearview mirror, and it didn't matter that teams now knew that there was an injury in August because he had recovered from the injury. And whether or not Southeastern knew he was hurt or not didn't matter because they couldn't do anything about it because it's a different sport they play. But Ole Miss certainly could, and by the time LSU gets to Ole Miss, you've got a healthy quarterback. That's why the timing of the announcement came last week. I think those dots are reasonable to connect to me. So for me, I think Garrett Nussmeier is healthy. I think he's ready to go, and I think that gives LSU its best team going forward and really its only chance moving forward, because if he is compromised in any significant way, this LSU football team cannot reach its potential. He is that important to this team. So that is far and away the lead to Saturday night's game, and I don't know that there's a close second story. I'll mention a couple of things that we talked about in the post-game show and that I think are worth noting. Michael Van Buren played in the game for his first action as a Tiger, and I thought he played nicely. He was 10 for 12 for 122 yards, threw a touchdown pass, ran for a touchdown as well. This is less about the competition and more about just what he did when he was out there, because we watched Michael Van Buren play a lot in practice in August, and it wasn't very good. Like, he just didn't have good practices when we were out there. We didn't see every practice. We didn't see every rep, but we saw a lot of inaccurate throws. We saw the ball being turned over. We saw Joe Sloan chastising missed reads. Like, we saw a lot of negatives with Michael Van Buren at practice. And what you saw on Saturday night was a guy who looked comfortable, who threw the ball very accurately. He was 10 of 12, and one was a drop. So, I mean, he was on target 11 of his 12 throws, which, you have bigger windows to throw to against Southeastern than you do against, Oklahoma. But he made the throws, and I thought looked very comfortable. A backup quarterback this day and age in college football, you can't hope for too much because a lot of backups that aren't playing and have been beaten out but are veteran leave. So what you either have is a guy that is a freshman or very inexperienced who's waiting his turn to play but is already in the program, or you've got a guy that's generally speaking not as talented, that's not frustrated by not being a starter and leaving. So most teams are not going to have a very good backup quarterback at the top of the sport in college football. That's just the era that we're in. And so what your baseline is for a backup quarterback is now like, can you get someone in there that can function for a little bit if your starting quarterback misses a little bit of time? I would suggest that most teams around the country, you lose your starting quarterback for 8 games, it could be some trouble. And we'll talk a lot about backup quarterback with Ole Miss this weekend because Trinidad Chambliss is playing very well, and he may be blowing this point that I'm making up, but I think I'm speaking in general terms, and I think it's probably well-founded. You're not going to have, in many cases, a backup quarterback that can come in and play as well as the starting quarterback. But can you come in and hold the rope? And what Michael Van Buren did on Saturday was get some experience in this offense that he has never played in before and gain some confidence, and probably showed his coaching staff some of the things that he's comfortable with should LSU need to lean on him for 3 possessions in this game, 2 possessions in this game, 1 game against this team. I think that was good. I think it was a positive. Offensive line-wise, it was the biggest story on my Twitter feed. It was the biggest story on my text messages during this game in the stadium. There are some issues on the right side of the offensive line. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. Brian Kelly was asked today about Weston Davis, said he's done a really nice job. Said that he's a young player and that that job is not up for grabs. There's not a competition at right tackle right now. G.J. Chester is the second team right tackle, and they'll get Carius Kern up to speed as quickly as they can. But Weston Davis is the guy. And right now, like I go to the Pro Football Focus grades every Sunday and put a story up on LouisianaSports.net. Like, he's been in the bottom 5 in every game. The grades are not very good. The eye test is not very good. He's got to play better, and that's very, very obvious. Here's what I would say about Weston Davis today. I've been out to practice. I've been very close to Weston Davis at practice. There is not an offensive lineman in college football that looks the part more than Weston Davis. He is all of 6'6". His arms go for an hour and a half. He's got a small waist, and he's got quick feet, and like he's got every bit of ability and the tangibles that you could possibly want. He's also a redshirt freshman who did not start a game last year. So you're at the bottom of his development right now. What the top is, I don't know. And how quickly he can get to the top, I don't know either. But they need to see some improvement from him. The good news is he's got the ability to improve, and he's young in his career. It's not like you're talking about a guy who's been the same for 3 years. He's been in this program for 1.5 years now. So I think everyone's aware, just watching, that things have got to be a little bit better at right tackle. But you've got a guy there that has the tools. He's just got to develop, and that's up to Brad Davis and this coaching staff to get him to play a little bit better than he has through the first month of the season. I think those were the biggest talking points. Injury updates did come today. We'll talk about those a little bit later on in the show for those that missed it. Trey'Dez Green, we saw pregame in a knee brace, running around, jumping, making catches. He looked great. They just held him out for one more week. He's going to play this week against Ole Miss, so that's good news. West Weeks ran yesterday with that calf strain. They said he ran up to 90%. They listed him as probable today, so very likely that he plays in the game against Ole Miss. Then you've got Caden Durham and Gabriel Relaford, who were hurt in the game on Saturday. Caden Durham's got an ankle issue, not a high ankle sprain. They're going to have him day-to-day. We'll get updates on him on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with the availability reports. We'll see. It sounds like it is an ankle injury that could cost him a week or two. It sounds like that. Then you got Gabriel Relaford, who had a shoulder injury. He was in a sling back on Saturday, and he had a shoulder injury that I have never heard of before, subluxation. I don't know what that is. I'm not a doctor, but we have a doctor coming on here in 30 minutes that can talk about it. He is going to get further evaluation. There's a possibility he can play through it. There's a possibility he would need to have surgery that would cost him a lot of time, potentially the entirety of the season. We just don't have that information yet. So Gabriel Relaford, the most significant of those injuries with the shoulder, they're going to get further information this week and determine a course of action for him. So that's a look at your injuries. That's a look at the storylines from Saturday night. And then we kind of put LSU and Southeastern to bed. I don't think there's a lot worth getting into in that game, as LSU wins it by 46 points and scored touchdowns on 8 straight drives at one point on Saturday night. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.